Well, a common frustration that I run into, I think a number of us have run into this. But this frustration inevitably occurs when someone is approaching God because they want to give themselves to God. So this isn't someone who's like, whatever about the faith. But they're actually desiring holiness. They want to go to heaven. They want to be close to God. They want to love the Lord. There's a common frustration I hear. I keep committing the same sins. I want to do better, but I keep committing these sins. And I think ministers hear this often, and even ministers themselves, right? We all kind of have sins and things in our life. But the image that I think is really helpful when we look at this is like a tree. So when we are going to confession, which the Lord tells us to do, we must do, that's our path to salvation. A lot of times what we're confessing is the fruit. We're confessing on our tree the rotten fruit. We've got a rotten apple, a rotten banana, and a rotten orange. All right, you all have your favorite genre of rotten fruit. And a lot of times we snip it off, and then we get frustrated that it keeps coming back. But the truth is, in order to actually get to the heart of it, now part of it is we're inclined towards sin. That's a given. But we need to look deeper, and we need to look deeper with the Lord who heals. So what in this analogy is the trunk of the tree, and what is the root? Because that's where the bad fruit is coming from. A lot of times we're just confessing the bad fruit. So in this analogy, if I hold it up to you, where the bad fruit comes from is lies that we believe. Definition of a lie, for those that don't know, something that's not true. I know, 8 years of seminary got me that far. But a lie is not true. And we believe these things about ourselves. And so we'll get into an example in a second. And then further down at the root, what is the root? What's at the core of this? Oftentimes is a wound or an experience or something in our life that hurt us. And that causes us to believe a lie, which then bears bad fruit. And so in the gospel, when we're hearing Jesus wanting to heal people, it's not just snipping off the rotten fruit. It's actually healing you at the root. And we all have this. We all have this. All right? I can get frustrated that I'm sneezing, but the question is, but what are you allergic to? What's causing you to sneeze? What's causing that rotten fruit? And we need to examine that with the Lord. And so here's an example for you. This is a friend of mine from college. He gives me permission to share this story, but it's very helpful. So he was a Division I soccer player. And so from the time he was young, he has been probably the best on his team. He's a forward. So if you know anything about soccer, I'm more into football, as we've discussed. But forward, he's scoring most of the goals. He was kind of their MVP. And so he was D1. He he was being recruited to go pro, but he actually hurt his back. And that actually brought him to the Lord, so it all ended up working out. But he said, actually, what was fascinating is his dad didn't intend to do this, but he was like, gosh, he started to come to the Lord, and he's like, why am I struggling with these sins? And he's like, well, gosh, I believe this lie that nothing I do will ever be good enough. So that's the trunk of the tree. And the Lord brought him even deeper. When he was young, his dad was a very good man. But a lot of times in the car, after a game, they'd win 4-2 or something. And this guy would score maybe 3 of the 4 goals. And his dad would be like, you really could have had another one. We could have had 5. Could have had 6. And I don't think Dad meant that to be hurtful. I think Dad was just like, let's throttle him. If we're going to win, let's do it, But how that came across to him and how he received that actually hurt him. It caused him to believe this lie about himself. Nothing that I do will ever be good enough. And so then what happened? Why am I struggling with comparison? Well, because nothing I do is ever good enough. Well, at least I can be better than that guy. Or why am I always trying to show off? Why am I prideful? Well, nothing I do is good enough. I'm trying. Why am I trying to numb out the pain? Well, I don't want to think about the fact that I'm not good enough. Do you see how that little lie slipped in there? And then at the root of it was this experience. And so we can get frustrated over, I'm struggling with comparison, I'm struggling with pride, I'm struggling with these sins, but we need to go, what lies are causing that? And even deeper, Lord, what's at the root? And it could be a mixture of things. And we all have baggage. We all have these things in our roots that, these experiences, these things, maybe we're not aware of them at the current time, but the point is, the Lord actually desires to heal this. That's the good news. Here's another, 8 years of seminary thing. The gospel means good news. That's good news. The Lord desires not just to snip off the rotten fruit, but he wants to heal you at the very core. In the gospel today, what happens? Peter's mother-in-law, she's sick with a fever. That's a physical illness that Jesus heals. They say various other illnesses, meaning that could be physical, that could be mental, that could be spiritual. Jesus cares about the whole person. And a lot of times they're intertwined. This is a little bit of a side note, but I do want to say this. I'm a little sick of the stigma that counseling and mental health is bad. I'm a little over that. In the seminary, if you go to one of the priests and say, you know what, I'd like to see the psychologist, I'd like to just process something that's going on, that actually is a plus in your category. They look at that and they say, this guy knows that life throws curveballs at you. He knows that he has stuff going on that he needs to work through. Who doesn't? There is no shame in going to someone and talking about what's going on. And so I don't know if I have the authority to do that, but I'm going to do it anyways. There is no shame in seeking healing in mental health. There is no shame in seeking healing in the spiritual life. There is no shame in seeking physical healing. The Lord cares about the whole person. Whether there's something going on in the marriage, whether it's something that's coming up from my past that's like, my dad wasn't very approving of me after the soccer game and we won 4-2, and I just want to talk to someone about it. Awesome. The Lord wants to work through that person to touch that and to heal that. And that is what this is about. This is about healing. This is about healing. He wants to take those lies that we believe and get right down to the root and heal us. And oftentimes, I think what we're going to realize is at the core, this is not really oftentimes it's not our fault, but it is our problem. So what does that mean? I think we really are hard on ourselves, but it's oftentimes, the cards we were dealt, a lot of times. And that's causing us to sin. I'm not saying sin isn't our fault. It isn't our intentional turning away from God. Absolutely. Those things need to be healed. But we need to acknowledge honestly before God, where are those places? And I'll just say this as a final thing here. What is the call? What can I practically do to start this healing? God, others. We must be connected to the divine physician. If you want to begin the process of healing, and healing is a lifetime thing. I'm still healing. Pope Francis is still healing. Anyone you think of is still healing. There's no shame in that. But we need the eyes of the divine physician. He diagnoses the problem. I don't need to go digging. He'll bring it up. He's the one that prescribes the medicine. He's the one that leads us to the help. But we need to listen. If we are not praying, we are not connected with him. And I mean that. That is something as Catholics we must be doing if we want to receive healing. We need God's help. He says, without me, you can do nothing. And secondly, we need other people. God places people in our lives. And so I mentioned, obviously, psychological, but also good community. Brothers need brothers, sisters need sisters, husband and wives need to be talking to each other. We need spiritual fathers. I don't know what you call a deacon, spiritual uncle? I don't know. But we need these things. We need the support of others. We're in this together, people. We're in this together. And God desires to heal us. And so that's the good news. of the gospel today, and let's just open ourselves up in prayer. Let's make a commitment here as we start February. That's what we want to do. We want to be healed, Lord. Please heal us.